June 30th, 1944. Above the vast, inky expanse of the Pacific Ocean, at an operational altitude of 15,000 feet, the night air was thick with the thrumming resonance of twin Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines. Each generating over 2,000 horsepower, they propelled a radical new war machine through a darkness so absolute it swallowed the horizon. Inside this formidable aircraft, the P-61B-1 Moonlight Serenade, a three-man crew operated with the synchronized precision of a well-oiled tactical unit. In the forward cockpit, Captain Dale Mooney Ernst, the pilot, maintained a steady course, his eyes scanning the void beyond the canopy, relying on instruments that glowed faintly, a microcosm of control in the enveloping black. Behind him, in the dedicated radar compartment, Lieutenant Edward Copsell, the radar observer, was the crew's indispensable eyes. His world was a green cathode ray tube, a swirling vortex of electronic impulses translating into fleeting blips, a silent ballet of detection. Copsell's voice, calm and measured, cut through the intercom. Bogey at 12 o'clock, closing range 8 miles, bearing steady. This was not a visual acquisition, it was a ghost hunt guided by advanced electronics. The target, a Japanese Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, was on a routine reconnaissance profile, oblivious to the hunter silently closing its distance. In the P-61's unique dorsal turret, Staff Sergeant George Mooney, the gunner, stood ready, though his immediate role was observational, awaiting the pilot's command to engage the remote-controlled quad .50 caliber machine guns. The Black Widow, despite its considerable size, became a spectral predator. Its matte black finish and flame-dampened exhaust rendered it virtually invisible to the naked eye, a critical tactical advantage in night operations. Copsell continued to refine the intercept vector, his precise instructions guiding Ernst's every subtle adjustment. Target now 3 miles, holding altitude, beginning descent to engage. Ernst meticulously brought the P-61 into a position of overwhelming tactical superiority, employing the night fighter's inherent stealth. He positioned the Black Widow below and astern of the unsuspecting Betty, a classic night fighter maneuver designed to deny the enemy any visual or defensive counter-opportunity. Copsell's voice, calm and measured, cut through the intercom. Bogey at 12 o'clock, closing range 8 miles, bearing steady. This was not a visual acquisition, it was a ghost hunt guided by advanced electronics. The target, a Japanese Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, was on a routine reconnaissance profile, oblivious to the hunter silently closing its distance. In the P-61's unique dorsal turret, Staff Sergeant George Mooney, the gunner, stood ready, though his immediate role was observational, awaiting the pilot's command to engage the remote-controlled quad .50 caliber machine guns. The Black Widow, despite its considerable size, became a spectral predator. Its matte black finish and flame-dampened exhaust rendered it virtually invisible to the naked eye, a critical tactical advantage in night operations. Copsell continued to refine the intercept vector, his precise instructions guiding Ernst's every subtle adjustment. Target now 3 miles, holding altitude, beginning descent to engage. Ernst meticulously brought the P-61 into a position of overwhelming tactical superiority, employing the night fighter's inherent stealth. He positioned the Black Widow below and astern of the unsuspecting Betty, a classic night fighter maneuver designed to deny the enemy any visual or defensive counter-opportunity. At an optimal range, Ernst triggered the attack. The P-61 erupted into a maelstrom of fire and fury. 4 nose-mounted 20mm cannons and the 4.50 caliber machine guns from the dorsal turret unleashed a devastating fusillade. Streams of tracer rounds ripped through the darkness, converging on the lumbering bomber. The Japanese aircraft, caught completely by surprise, sustained catastrophic damage within seconds. A catastrophic explosion blossomed in the night, a brief, violent flower of fire and debris. The radio silence was broken by Ernst's laconic declaration, "Splash 1." This was not merely another kill. It was the P-61 Black Widow's first confirmed air-to-air victory, a stark validation of its radical design and the synergistic prowess of its specialized crew. The unseen hunter had delivered its unseen kill, marking a pivotal moment in the nocturnal air war over the Pacific. But how did such a revolutionary aircraft, capable of such precise, unseen destruction, ever come to be? The path from concept to combat validation was fraught with institutional skepticism and fierce debate, a testament to the audacious vision of its creators against the prevailing doctrinal adherents of the era. The genesis of the P-61 Black Widow dates back to late 1940, a period when the Luftwaffe's nocturnal bombing campaigns over Britain underscored a critical deficiency: the lack of a purpose-built night fighter. The Royal Air Force, then scrambling to adapt existing day fighters like the Bristol B-Fighter and Hawker Hurricane with rudimentary radar, identified a clear and urgent requirement. This intelligence was relayed to the United States through a British purchasing commission, sparking an immediate response from the U.S. Army Air Corps, specifically its Material Division. While existing fighters were being jury-rigged for night operations, one visionary aircraft designer, Jack Northrop, already foresaw the strategic imperative for a wholly dedicated night interdiction platform. His design philosophy diverged sharply from conventional thought. Northrop argued that simply retrofitting a fast day fighter with radar was an insufficient and inherently compromised solution. Instead, he envisioned a robust, twin-engine aircraft designed from the outset to be a stable radar platform, capable of long endurance, and housing a specialized 3-man crew. This crew, pilot, radar operator, and gunner, would operate as a synergistic unit, the human and technological eyes of the night. The initial design requirements for what would become the XP-61 were formidable. The ability to carry the bulky, then secretive SCR-720 AI radar system, a potent armament of 20mm cannons and .50 caliber machine guns, and sufficient internal fuel for extended patrols. Northrop's response was a large, imposing airframe powered by twin Pratt & Whitney R2800 double WASP engines, featuring a distinctive twin-boom configuration to allow for a clear field of fire from its remote dorsal turret and to house its sophisticated electronics. However, this ambitious concept immediately clashed with the prevailing sentiment within many segments of the military brass. Critics, often fixated on the raw speed and agility of single-engine day fighters, viewed Northrop's design as an overly complex, excessively heavy, and therefore inherently slow flying barn. The British de Havilland Mosquito, a sleek wooden twin-engine bomber converted into a fighter, often served as the benchmark against which the P-61 was unfavorably compared. Its proponents championed the Mosquito's speed and adaptability, arguing that a lighter, faster aircraft, even with a less sophisticated radar, was the more pragmatic and cost-effective solution. The perception was that the P-61's estimated empty weight of nearly 20,000 pounds, a colossal figure for a fighter of its era, would render it sluggish and vulnerable, a logistical nightmare that drained resources for questionable operational efficacy. This fundamental philosophical divergence between a specialized radar-centric system and an adapted speed-focused platform defined the early, contentious years of the Black Widow's development. It was born into an environment of doubt, its very existence an argument against the established norms of aerial combat. Before the advent of airborne radar, night aerial combat was a realm of profound uncertainty, a lethal lottery played out in absolute darkness. Pilots scoured the inky blackness for the faintest silhouette, relying on fleeting glimpses, tracer fire, or the distant flicker of an engine exhaust. Interceptions were often matters of pure chance, limited to visibility to within a few hundred yards. This perilous reality was the problem the P-61 Black Widow was engineered to solve, and its solution lay in a revolutionary piece of technology, the SCR-720 Airborne Intercept Radar. This sophisticated microwave radar system housed within the P-61's distinctive bulbous nose was nothing short of a tactical game-changer. Operating on the X-band frequency, it emitted precisely timed pulses of radio energy, which, upon striking an enemy aircraft, would reflect back to the Black Widow's receiving antenna. The SCR-720 then meticulously processed these echoes, translating the raw data into a visual representation for the radar operator positioned in the P-61's mid-fuselage compartment. On his Planned Position Indicator, or PPI scope, targets would appear as glowing blips, their range and bearing relative to the Black Widow clearly displayed. The operator, acting as the aircraft's eyes, would then vector the pilot, providing precise instructions. Bogey at 12 o'clock high, range 2 miles, closing. This guidance wasn't merely directional. The SCR-720 also offered critical information on target altitude and aspect, allowing the crew to construct a three-dimensional mental image of the unfolding engagement. While early British and German night fighter radars, such as the AI-Mk4 and the Fug-220 Liechtenstein, had pioneered the field, the SCR-720 represented a significant leap forward in range, resolution, and reliability, particularly in its ability to paint smaller, faster targets with greater clarity. However, even this advanced system had its operational parameters and limitations. Intense atmospheric conditions, such as heavy rain or dense cloud cover, could scatter radar pulses, creating clutter that obscured genuine targets. Ground returns, particularly over land, could also interfere, making low-altitude intercepts a complex endeavor. Furthermore, there was a critical minimum range. As the P-61 closed in, the target blip would eventually merge with the radar's own transmission pulse, necessitating a transition to visual acquisition. This required the radar operator to guide the pilot precisely to the point where the enemy aircraft would become visible, typically within a few hundred yards, before the radar lost its lock. Despite these constraints, the SCR-720 fundamentally redefined night aerial combat. It transformed blind patrols into directed hunts, allowing the P-61 to locate and track enemy aircraft with unprecedented accuracy, often from several miles away. This capability bestowed upon the Black Widow an unparalleled advantage, effectively making it invisible to its prey until the very last fatal moments. It was the fusion of this cutting-edge sensor technology with devastating firepower and a highly trained crew that allowed the P-61 to achieve its silent, unseen kills, establishing a new paradigm for night air defense that would influence interceptor doctrine for decades to come. The revolutionary SCR-720 undoubtedly transformed night air combat, but its cutting edge was merely potential until harnessed by the specialized crew of the P-61 Black Widow. It was this unique three-man configuration, pilot, radar operator, and gunner that transcended the machine's complexity, forging it into an efficient, deadly hunting system. Each position demanded an exacting level of skill and unwavering discipline, cultivated through intense, specialized training programs. At the forefront, the pilot, situated in the forward cockpit, was the orchestrator of the intercept. Beyond mastery of advanced instrument flying and complex aerodynamic maneuvers in absolute darkness, the P-61 pilot had to possess an exceptional degree of trust and responsiveness to the unseen directives from the radar operator. Their training emphasized rapid visual acquisition in the fleeting final moments of an intercept, transitioning from radar-guided approach to a decisive firing solution, often against camouflaged or silhouetted targets. Crucially, nestled in the central fuselage compartment was the combat radar operator, the true eyes of the Black Widow. Operating the sophisticated SCR-720, the CRO was responsible for interpreting the raw radar data displayed on their planned position indicator scope. This position demanded an exceptional aptitude for spatial reasoning, enabling them to distinguish enemy aircraft from atmospheric clutter and ground returns, then translate those blips into precise vectors, ranges, altitudes, and aspect angles for the pilot. Their training was rigorous, focusing on rapid target identification, understanding intercept geometry, and issuing clear, concise navigational commands under extreme combat pressure. The CRO was the tactical brain, guiding the P-61 through the vast, invisible expanse of the night. Completing this formidable trinity was the gunner, positioned in the elevated dorsal turret section of the rear fuselage. While their primary role involved operating the quad .50 caliber machine guns for rearward defense, the gunner's responsibilities often extended to critical tasks such as navigation, maintaining radio communication with ground control or other flight elements, and acting as an additional pair of eyes for visual target acquisition, especially during the terminal phase of an intercept when the target might dip below the SCR-720's minimum range. Their presence ensured comprehensive situational awareness and allowed the pilot to focus exclusively on flying and engaging the enemy. The synergy between these three specialists was the P-61's ultimate weapon. A constant stream of precise, concise commands and confirmations flowed between the radar operator and the pilot, a silent ballet choreographed by shared training and implicit trust. The pilot executed the flight path, the CRO refined the intercept, and the gunner provided vital peripheral awareness and defensive capability. This symbiotic relationship transformed the P-61 from a complex machine into an integrated, sentient hunter, capable of executing deadly pincer movements in the dark, achieving unseen victories that redefined night aerial combat and established foundational doctrinal precedents for future interceptor development. The deployment of the P-61 Black Widow to the Pacific Theater marked a critical juncture for the controversial night fighter. After enduring a protracted development cycle and the skepticism of a procurement establishment that often favored speed over specialized capability, the aircraft finally arrived in a theater of operations where its unique attributes were desperately needed. The vast oceanic expanse of the Pacific presented an unparalleled challenge for air superiority, particularly at night. Distances between island bases were immense, requiring combat air patrols of extraordinary endurance, often stretching for 5 to 6 hours over featureless black water. Tropical conditions exacted a heavy toll. The relentless humidity and corrosive salt air were inimical to complex electronic systems, posing a severe threat to the SCR-720 radar and the P-61's extensive electrical network. Maintenance crews on remote airfields grappled with these environmental factors, often improvising solutions to keep the sophisticated aircraft operational. Yet it was precisely these logistical and environmental hurdles that underscored the Black Widow's robustness and the resilience of its ground crews. The 6th Night Fighter Squadron, based initially at Saipan, spearheaded the P-61's operational debut. Their primary mission, intercepting Japanese night bombers, predominantly the Mitsubishi G4M Betty and Nakajima G5N Liz, which typically operated under the cloak of darkness to harass Allied airfields and shipping lanes. These were not mere opportunistic raids. Japanese nocturnal operations were meticulously planned, often leveraging cloud cover and radio silence to penetrate Allied air defenses. The P-61's operational doctrine rapidly evolved to counter these threats. Pilots learned to exploit the radar operator's unparalleled situational awareness, conducting long-range intercepts far from their home base. The critical element was the SCR-720 radar, the eyes of the Black Widow, which allowed the radar operator to vector the pilot onto targets well beyond visual range, often from below and behind, minimizing the P-61's own radar signal against the ground clutter and presenting a virtually invisible approach path to the unsuspecting enemy. One of the most defining early successes occurred on the night of June 30, 1944. Somewhere above the Pacific at 15,000 feet, a P-61 of the 6th NFS, piloted by Lieutenant Dale Mooney, with Lieutenant Fred Kopsel as radar operator and Lieutenant P.M. Ernst as gunner, began an intercept. The twin Pratt & Whitney radios roared through the darkness as Kopsel, his eyes fixed on the green scope, called out the closure rate. Bogey at 12 o'clock, closing range 8 miles. They swung into the intercept vector. The Japanese Betty bomber, likely on a reconnaissance or bombing run, had no inkling of the silent predator closing in. Mooney expertly guided the heavy fighter, relying entirely on Kopsel's precise instructions. The moment of truth arrived as the P-61 slipped into firing position, its dark silhouette merging with the night. Ernst opened fire with the dorsal turret's 4.50 caliber machine guns, complemented by the 420mm cannons in the belly. The fusillade tore into the bomber, which erupted in a violent explosion, its wreckage plummeting into the unseen ocean below. This was not a chance encounter. It was a systematic, radar-guided kill, achieved without the enemy ever detecting their assailant. Such engagements rapidly cemented the Black Widow's fearsome reputation. Japanese pilots, accustomed to relatively unmolested night operations, began to report inexplicable losses. Aircraft would simply vanish, their last radio transmissions often cut short by sudden, devastating fire. The P-61, with its silent approach and devastating firepower, became known among Allied airmen as the Ghost of the Darkness, a formidable, unseen hunter that owned the night skies over the Pacific. These initial, decisive victories not only validated the P-61's design philosophy, but also instilled a growing confidence in its crews, proving that the blend of advanced radar and skilled teamwork was an indispensable asset in the unforgiving crucible of night warfare. As the Black Widow cemented its fearsome reputation in the vast, dark expanses of the Pacific, demonstrating an indispensable mastery of unseen aerial combat, the strategic demands of the European theater soon called for its unique capabilities to confront a new, insidious threat. Following the D-Day landings in June 1944, a new form of aerial terror emerged from occupied France, the German V-1 flying bomb. These pulse-jet-powered missiles, often referred to as doodlebugs, were unleashed upon London and southeastern England, presenting a unique and urgent air defense challenge. The V-1s flew at approximately 340 miles per hour, typically at altitudes between 2,000 and 3,000 feet. Their small radar cross-section and the difficulty of visually acquiring their jet flame against the night sky rendered conventional interceptors largely ineffective. This was a mission tailor-made for the P-61. Its advanced SCR-720 radar, with its precise target acquisition capabilities, allowed the Black Widow's radar operator to vector the pilot onto the incoming V-1 with remarkable accuracy. The pilot, guided by the radar scope, would then maneuver into position, often requiring a delicate balance of speed and altitude to match the V-1's trajectory before unleashing the devastating firepower of the 20mm cannons. Despite the P-61's own considerable mass, its robust airframe and stable gun platform proved highly effective against these fast-moving, unpiloted threats, contributing significantly to the Allied effort to mitigate the V-1 barrage. Beyond its crucial role in air defense, the P-61 Black Widow also proved its versatility in offensive intruder missions over continental Europe. Its long endurance, heavy armament, and superior night navigation capabilities made it an ideal platform for operating deep behind enemy lines. P-61 crews conducted relentless ground attack and interdiction sorties against German transport and communication networks, particularly during critical phases of the Allied advance and the desperate German counteroffensives. Flying low and fast through the darkness, they targeted railway locomotives, supply convoys, troop movements, and airfield infrastructure, disrupting the logistical arteries vital to the German war machine. These clandestine operations, executed under the cloak of night, inflicted substantial attrition and psychological pressure on enemy forces, forcing the Wehrmacht to divert precious resources to nighttime perimeter defense. The Black Widow, originally conceived as an air-to-air specialist, had thus demonstrated its multi-role efficacy, proving invaluable in both the defensive skies over Britain and the offensive depths of the European night. The P-61 Black Widow, a marvel of wartime engineering, was merely a potent chassis until its crews forged the intricate doctrines that would define night combat for a generation. Operating in an environment where visual cues were almost entirely absent, the development of effective tactics became a crucible for ingenuity, demanding a profound synergy between man and machine. The very essence of night fighting hinged upon the Black Widow's revolutionary SCR-720 radar system. Its radar observer, or RO, became the pilot's sensory extension, translating the abstract blips on a cathode ray tube into a three-dimensional tactical picture. Initial intercepts were often cautious, relying on sustained pursuit and hoping for a visual lock. However, as experience accrued, crews began to leverage the radar's full capabilities, developing precise intercept vectors and closure rates that maximized the element of surprise. The RO would guide the pilot with exacting commands, fine-tuning the approach until the target's radar signature filled the screen, signaling the optimal moment for the pilot to attempt a visual acquisition. Crucially, the P-61's crews swiftly recognized the paramount importance of minimizing their own radar signature and visual profile during the final attack phase. This led to the widespread adoption of the now legendary below and behind approach. Rather than a direct tail chase, which presented a larger radar cross-section and allowed the enemy to potentially detect the Black Widow's approach, crews would initiate an intercept from below the target's altitude, gradually closing the distance while maintaining a position directly astern. This specific vector offered several decisive advantages. Firstly, by remaining below the target, the Black Widow exploited a gap in many enemy radar systems, often placing it within the target's blind spot. Secondly, this approach kept the P-61 silhouetted against the darker ground or sea, making it virtually invisible against the night sky, especially as its dark paint scheme absorbed ambient light. Finally, and perhaps most critically, the below and behind position placed the Black Widow in an ideal firing solution for its formidable armament. The four nose-mounted 20mm Hispano cannons, complemented by the 4.50 caliber machine guns in the dorsal turret, could unleash a devastating volley into the vulnerable underside of an enemy bomber or transport, often before the target's crew even registered a threat. The kinetic energy of this concentrated fire tore through airframes, ensuring swift, decisive kills. This continuous refinement of doctrine, born from the crucible of combat and meticulously analyzed in post-mission debriefs, underscored the critical role of crew experience. It wasn't merely the technology, but the highly trained and adaptable three-man teams, the pilot, the RO, and the gunner, who truly mastered the darkness, transforming a technically advanced aircraft into an apex predator of the night sky. The Black Widow had achieved a unique form of tactical dominance in the night skies. Its radar eyes, once a revolutionary gamble, had become a devastatingly effective tool, and its three-man crews, masters of their craft, had purged vast sectors of nocturnal enemy air activity. Yet, this very success began to sow the seeds of its own perceived obsolescence. As the P-61 systematically decimated the Japanese night bomber formations and German nocturnal transport flights, the number of viable targets plummeted. By late 1944 and into 1945, particularly in certain theaters of operation, the critical need for a dedicated night fighter seemed to diminish, not because the threat was gone, but because the Black Widow had so effectively neutralized it. For procurement boards and strategic planners, a low kill count in a given month could be misconstrued as a lack of necessity rather than a testament to overwhelming efficacy. This was the Ghost's paradox. The more invisible and effective the P-61 became in its mission, the less visible its ongoing strategic value appeared to those scrutinizing balance sheets and projected requirements. The P-61, with its heavier logistical footprint and specialized radar, was a costly asset to produce and maintain. Critics, often proponents of simpler single-role fighters or the more versatile de Havilland Mosquito, began to argue that its unique capabilities were no longer justified against a dwindling nocturnal threat. They consistently overlooked the critical cause and effect. This dwindling threat was, in large part, due to the Black Widow's relentless patrols and successful intercepts. For the crews who understood intimately the quiet terror of the darkness and the vital deterrent effect their presence offered, this assessment was a bitter irony. Their unseen kills, precise and devastating, had effectively cleared the skies, only for that very emptiness to be used as evidence against the continued production and deployment of their formidable aircraft. The Black Widow, designed to operate in the shadows, found itself battling a different kind of darkness, the institutional blindness to a success so profound it inadvertently masked its own necessity. Its legacy would forever be intertwined with this strange, self-defeating triumph. August 14, 1945. The Pacific Theater, for all intents and purposes, was poised on the precipice of peace. Japan's surrender was imminent, a broadcast expected from Tokyo, yet the formal cessation of hostilities had not yet been declared. In this fragile interlude, the engines of conflict still turned, with P-61 Black Widows continuing their night patrols. Over the Japanese home islands, specifically the Kanto Plain, a Black Widow named Lady in the Dark, assigned to the 548th Night Fighter Squadron, was on station. Piloted by Lieutenant Frederick Kendall, with Lieutenant Rex Beasley as radar observer and Lieutenant Rudy Fink as gunner, they were a seasoned crew. Their SCR-720 radar, the very eyes that had granted the Black Widow its spectral dominance, swept the darkened airspace. At approximately 2300 hours, a radar contact materialized. It was a twin-engine Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber moving eastward. Standard operating procedure dictated intercept. Kendall initiated the pursuit, his powerful Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines closing the distance stealthily. Beasley, meticulously guiding Kendall via radar, provided the necessary vector for a textbook unseen approach. The Betty remained oblivious. As Kendall positioned Lady in the Dark into a firing solution directly astern and below the enemy aircraft, the distinctive silhouette of the Japanese bomber filled his gun sight. Kendall unleashed a devastating burst from the P-61's 450 caliber machine guns and 420 mm cannons. The Betty erupted into flames, a fiery blossom against the night sky, and plummeted into the ocean below. It was a swift, clinical kill, indistinguishable from the scores of other unseen victories attributed to the Black Widow throughout the war. The grim irony of this final engagement would only reveal itself hours later. The downed Betty was not a combatant. It was a diplomatic transport carrying Japanese delegates en route to Ishima, a forward American base, to negotiate the terms of unconditional surrender. A white flag was reportedly visible on the aircraft, though unseen in the darkness by the P-61 crew, whose mission was to neutralize any detected threat. This tragic incident, a byproduct of the lingering fog of war between the announcement of intent and the formal ceasefire, became the last air-to-air kill of World War II. It underscored the brutal, unyielding nature of conflict, where even at the very threshold of peace, the mechanisms of war could still extract their terrible toll, transforming a routine interception into a profoundly bittersweet and regrettable historical footnote for the P-61 and its crew. The war's final tragic kill was a stark reminder of the Black Widow's brutal efficacy. But as the global conflagration subsided, a new battle began for the P-61, not against enemy aircraft in the night skies, but against the very institutions that had once championed, then questioned its existence. The cessation of hostilities initiated a period of intense post-bellum reevaluation across all branches of military development. For the P-61, a highly specialized and expensive aircraft, this translated into immediate scrutiny. Critics, many of whom had doubted its utility from the outset, resurfaced with renewed vigor, arguing for its rapid obsolescence in an era poised for jet propulsion and conventional daylight air superiority. The prevailing sentiment among many senior staff officers was that the Black Widow, with its substantial weight and relatively slower speed compared to emergent jet designs, was an anachronism. However, its most ardent proponents, those who truly understood its unique contribution, rose to its defense. Jack Northrop, the visionary designer, articulated a compelling argument for the foresight embedded in the P-61's architecture. He contended that the aircraft's robust frame and integrated radar system were not merely features, but foundational elements that defined its operational efficacy in a specialized domain. Northrop famously asserted, "We built a system, not just an airplane, a system for owning the night." His arguments were powerfully reinforced by combat veterans like Lieutenant Colonel Carroll C. Cat Ernst, who had commanded P-61 squadrons in the Pacific. Ernst's testimonials were grounded in irrefutable combat statistics and tactical successes. He detailed how the Black Widow's radar eyes, its potent armament, and the synergistic three-man crew had repeatedly achieved interception rates and unseen kills that no other contemporary fighter could replicate in the darkness. He countered the weight and speed criticisms by highlighting that these were necessary trade-offs for its unique mission profile, arguing that the P-61 didn't need to outrun a Messerschmitt. It needed to find and destroy a bomber that couldn't see it coming. Their combined defense underscored that the P-61 was not merely an aircraft, but a proof of concept for integrated airborne intercept systems. Despite these impassioned defenses, the sheer cost and specialized nature of the P-61 meant its operational combat life was relatively brief in the immediate post-war drawdown. Yet, its inherent capabilities ensured it was far from discarded. Its large airframe, stable flight characteristics, and ample internal volume made it an ideal platform for scientific research and developmental testing. Black Widows were repurposed by NACA, the precursor to NASA, for high-altitude atmospheric studies, served as test beds for early ejection seat designs, and were even modified to evaluate novel radar and electronic systems that would later become standard in Cold War interceptors. One notable instance involved a P-61 being used to flight test early ramjet engines, demonstrating its adaptability beyond its original combat brief. Ultimately, the P-61's lasting impact transcended its combat statistics. It established critical doctrinal precedents for the subsequent generation of jet interceptors, proving the indispensable nature of an integrated radar-equipped system for all-weather and night defense. The Black Widow demonstrated that specialized aircraft, even when initially controversial, could fill strategic voids that conventional designs simply could not. Its legacy was the vindication of a design philosophy that prioritized mission-specific integration over generic performance metrics, laying the groundwork for the dedicated interceptor squadrons that would patrol the skies throughout the Cold War. The P-61, the ghost that owned the darkness, secured its place not just as a combat veteran, but a technological progenitor whose innovative eyes forever changed the landscape of air defense. The Black Widow's operational tenure may have been brief, yet its strategic impact resonated far beyond the armistice, casting a long, enduring shadow over the evolution of aerial warfare. Its true innovation lay not merely in its airframe, but in its conceptualization as an integrated weapon system, a symbiotic relationship between advanced radar and a specialized three-man crew. This foundational principle, a dedicated platform for all-weather radar-guided interception, directly informed the development of the nascent jet interceptor programs that would define the Cold War. The P-61's operational parameters, particularly its reliance on the SCR-720 radar for target acquisition and engagement, provided the blueprint for the entirely radar-dependent combat profiles of future jet interceptors like the F-89 Scorpion, F-94 Starfire, and later the F-101 Voodoo. The crew configuration, with distinct roles for pilot, radar operator, and gunner, established doctrinal precedents for multi-seat interceptors, recognizing the cognitive load and specialized skills required for nocturnal or all-weather engagements. It demonstrated unequivocally that the eyes of the aircraft were as critical as its engines. As the Cold War escalated, the lessons gleaned from the P-61's nocturnal hunts became a strategic imperative. The threat of high-altitude, all-weather bomber penetration demanded a sophisticated air defense architecture, one that leveraged ground-controlled interception, GCI, and onboard radar systems, a lineage directly traceable to the P-61's early successes. The Black Widow proved that a specialized design, optimized for a singular, demanding mission, could achieve tactical superiority where general-purpose fighters might falter. This vindication of specialized aircraft design became a cornerstone of post-war military procurement, moving away from the jack-of-all-trades mentality to focus on purpose-built platforms for distinct combat roles. Furthermore, the advancement spurred by the SCR-720 radar, pushing the boundaries of airborne detection and tracking, directly contributed to the rapid evolution of radar technology that would underpin virtually all subsequent air defense and air-to-air combat systems. The P-61, often underestimated, effectively forged the very blueprint for how nations would defend their skies in the coming decades. The ultimate vindication of the P-61 Black Widow was not solely its tally of confirmed air-to-air victories, nor its distinguished combat record across two primary theaters of operation. Its true value resided in a profound, enduring contribution to the very architecture of aerial warfare. This aircraft, initially dismissed as an oversized, overly complex anomaly, proved to be a pioneering weapon system where the sum of its parts far exceeded individual expectations. The P-61 was more than just an airframe. It was a meticulously engineered, synergistic system designed for a specific, unforgiving mission. Its cutting-edge SCR-720 radar, the eyes that pierced the deepest night, represented a technological leap forward, allowing its dedicated three-man crew to operate with unprecedented tactical awareness. This sophisticated sensor suite, combined with the precise coordination of the pilot, gunner, and radar operator, enabled the Black Widow to achieve its infamous unseen kills. Enemy aircraft, often unaware of the impending threat until it was too late, were intercepted and destroyed from positions of unassailable advantage, a testament to both the aircraft's stealth capabilities and the crew's mastery of their formidable machine. From the moonless skies over the Pacific, where it hunted Japanese bombers on long-range interdiction patrols, to the frenetic defense of Britain against the V-1 flying bombs, the Black Widow consistently demonstrated its operational efficacy. What was once deemed unnecessary by strategic planners became an essential component of Allied air superiority, particularly in specialized night operations. Its robust design and heavy armament provided unparalleled combat effectiveness, ensuring that the darkness, which once offered sanctuary to enemy aircraft, instead became a hunting ground for America's first dedicated night fighter. The P-61 Black Widow, therefore, stands not merely as a relic of World War II, but as a testament to the power of innovation and human ingenuity, a pioneering warplane that redefined the tactical landscape of aerial combat and forged the blueprint for all future night interceptors.